Tonight, Leonardo DiCaprio is not here. And honestly, that's kind of the point. Because Leonardo DiCaprio has mastered something that feels almost impossible in modern culture. He stays relevant by not being everywhere. In a world that rewards constant presence, Leonardo DiCaprio chose absence, not disappearance. Absence with intention. Most celebrities build visibility by staying in the conversation. Leonardo DiCaprio stays powerful by stepping out of it. Now pause for a second. Think about how often you see him speak. Not in character, not on screen. Just him. It's rare, and rarity creates value. Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't explain himself often. He doesn't overshare. He doesn't chase relatability. He lets distance do the work. And distance, when used correctly, creates mystique. Mystique is dangerous in a culture addicted to clarity, because mystique keeps people guessing. Guessing keeps attention alive. Now think about fame again. Most actors peak and then cling to visibility. Leonardo DiCaprio did the opposite. After reaching global recognition, he narrowed his appearances. Fewer interviews, fewer public moments, more control. That decision wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Leonardo DiCaprio understands something subtle, that overexposure erodes authority. When people see everything, nothing feels special. So he protects scarcity. Scarcity is power. Now consider his career choices. Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't act often. He waits, and waiting changes perception. Each role feels deliberate. Each appearance feels earned. He doesn't flood the market, he curates it. And curation is a form of respect. Respect for the craft, respect for the audience. Now let's talk about control again. Leonardo DiCaprio's control is quiet. He doesn't announce boundaries. He lives them. He doesn't correct narratives constantly. He lets them fade. Silence for him is not avoidance, it's filtration. Now think about the internet. The internet demands reaction. Fast opinions, immediate responses. Leonardo DiCaprio rarely reacts, and that refusal feels almost rebellious. Because when everyone is shouting, the quiet person becomes noticeable. Now here's the late-night irony. People often describe him as private, but privacy isn't secrecy, it's selectivity. Leonardo DiCaprio chooses what parts of his life become public currency, and he keeps the rest protected. That protection allows longevity. Most public figures burn out from being available. Leonardo DiCaprio preserves himself by limiting access. Now think about pressure. Pressure usually pushes people to overperform, to prove relevance. Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't prove. He waits. Waiting communicates confidence. Confidence that relevance won't disappear if you step away. That confidence is earned. Now let's talk about masculinity. Leonardo DiCaprio represents a version of masculinity that isn't loud. He doesn't posture, he doesn't dominate conversations. He allows presence without performance. That subtlety feels outdated in a loud world, but it also feels stable. Stability is attractive when everything else feels temporary. Now consider legacy. Legacy requires distance from noise. You can't build something lasting while reacting constantly. Leonardo DiCaprio created space between himself and the moment. That space allowed reflection. Reflection allowed consistency. Consistency built trust. Now pause again. How many people do you know who could step back and trust their work to speak for them? That's rare. And rarity is exactly why Leonardo DiCaprio remains compelling. He doesn't chase the spotlight. He lets it wait. Now think about authority. Authority doesn't demand attention. It attracts it. Leonardo DiCaprio attracts attention without asking for it. That's the difference. Most people manage attention through presence. He manages it through restraint. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Leonardo DiCaprio's distance is not accidental humility. It's self-preservation. He understands the cost of exposure, the erosion of identity, the loss of privacy, the fatigue of being interpreted constantly. So he limits the surface area where that damage can occur. That's not fear, that's intelligence. Now let's talk about time. Time eventually tests everyone. Fame fades, trends shift. Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't fight time. He aligns with it. By slowing down. Slowing down makes time work for you instead of against you. Now think about relevance again. Relevance isn't about frequency, it's about impact. Leonardo DiCaprio appears rarely, but when he does, it matters. That's the kind of relevance that lasts. Now let's bring this back to you. Because this isn't just about Leonardo DiCaprio, it's about a different approach to being seen. One where absence doesn't equal disappearance. One where silence doesn't equal weakness. Leonardo DiCaprio reminds us that you don't have to be everywhere to be important, that sometimes stepping back is the most powerful move you can make. So tonight, this isn't about celebrating fame. It's about questioning how much of yourself you need to give away to stay relevant. Leonardo DiCaprio answered that question by giving less, and somehow that made him last longer. Now let's talk about escape, because for Leonardo DiCaprio, escape was never about running away. It was about not being consumed. Most people think distance means fear, but distance, when chosen, is a form of power. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't step back because he couldn't handle attention. He stepped back because he understood what attention does over time. Attention flattens people. It turns complexity into headlines, nuance into speculation, identity into narrative. Leonardo DiCaprio refused to become a headline about himself. He stayed a figure, not a feed. That distinction matters. Now think about what fame usually demands. Availability, endless explanation, constant clarification, a public version of yourself that never gets to rest. Leonardo DiCaprio opted out of that economy. He didn't sell access, he limited it. And limitation preserves shape. Without limits, everything blurs. Now consider how rare this is. Most people equate success with visibility. The more you're seen, the more you matter. Leonardo DiCaprio inverted that logic. He made invisibility part of his value. Not total invisibility, selective invisibility, the kind that makes appearances feel intentional instead of obligatory. Now let's talk about discipline, because restraint doesn't come naturally, especially not when attention rewards excess. Leonardo DiCaprio practices a discipline that looks passive from the outside, but it's not. It's active refusal. Refusal to comment on everything, refusal to chase every trend, refusal to fill every silence. That refusal protects his inner life, and an intact inner life is what sustains creative longevity. Now think about aging. Aging in public is unforgiving. The internet keeps receipts, culture resists evolution. Leonardo DiCaprio avoided the trap of trying to stay current at all costs. He didn't rebrand himself every few years. He stayed aligned with his craft, and alignment ages better than reinvention. Reinvention demands constant energy. Alignment conserves it. Now consider pressure again. Pressure usually forces people to explain who they are becoming. Leonardo DiCaprio let his work answer instead. Roles became statements, choices became language, silence became context. That approach trusts the audience, and trust builds respect. Now here's the late-night irony. People sometimes say Leonardo DiCaprio is distant, but distance isn't disinterest, it's boundary, and boundaries are not walls, they're filters. They let in what nourishes and keep out what erodes. Leonardo DiCaprio filters relentlessly, not emotionally, strategically. Now think about masculinity again. In a culture obsessed with visibility, his restraint reads almost old-fashioned. But that old-fashioned restraint is exactly why he feels grounded. He doesn't perform masculinity, he occupies it. Quietly. That quiet presence stands out more than any loud declaration ever could. Now let's talk about sustainability. Sustainability is not exciting, it doesn't trend, but it wins over time. Leonardo DiCaprio built a career that assumes longevity. He doesn't act like someone racing against irrelevance. He moves like someone who expects to still matter later. That expectation shapes behavior. It slows decisions, raises standards, reduces noise. Now consider the psychological cost of being constantly interpreted. Every smile analyzed, every silence questioned. Leonardo DiCaprio reduced that cost by reducing exposure. Less data for speculation. Fewer surfaces for projection. That's not avoidance. That's conservation. Now here's the uncomfortable realization. Most people don't burn out because they lack passion. They burn out because they lack boundaries. Leonardo DiCaprio built boundaries early, and he defended them consistently. Consistency is what made those boundaries believable. Now think about time again. Time rewards coherence. It punishes contradiction. Leonardo DiCaprio's public presence has remained remarkably coherent. Not static, but coherent. That coherence allows audiences to trust him without constant reassurance. Trust removes pressure. Pressure destroys longevity. Now bring this back to modern culture. We live in an era where being seen feels mandatory, where silence feels like failure. Leonardo DiCaprio challenges that assumption without ever saying so explicitly. His career is the argument, and arguments that don't shout often last longer. Now think about relevance one last time. Relevance built on noise requires constant renewal. Relevance built on restraint compounds quietly. Leonardo DiCaprio chose compounding. That choice made his career less chaotic and more durable. Now here's the final late-night thought. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't disappear because he was afraid of fading. He stepped back because he understood something rare. That not everything valuable needs to be visible all the time. That mystery is not manipulation, it's preservation. And that sometimes the strongest signal you can send in a noisy world is silence, used intentionally. Leonardo DiCaprio mastered that silence, and that mastery is why he still feels relevant without ever chasing relevance itself.